If there is any doubt that the response to tragedy erases the public political divide, even temporarily, look to a bill filed in Congress this week aimed at helping those who are about to face those costs of new safety changes to condominium law. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Democrat, whose district did include Surfside during that time, she filed a bill with Republican Congressman Bill Posey, who is a conservative from Rockledge, Florida. The Congresswoman is with us right there live on Zoom today. Good morning to you. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Glenna. Great to be with you. Thanks for really focusing in on this important topic.
Thanks for letting us know about it this week. It looks like, just from reading through it, it looks like the goal here is really to help people afford the mandates of the new state law we were just talking about with Vicki Lopez. Looks like it's all about the money. Is that right?
It really is. And even before the legislature finalized their decision, thankfully, to prevent condominium boards from waiving reserves and kicking the can down the road, as so many had done for so many years, former Congressman Charlie Crist introduced similar legislation. He and I co-led that legislation, but we focused in and combined the effort for this Congress to ensure both that condominium associations have the ability to finance these repairs, and also that condo residents can finance the assessments using the federal, the FHA home loan program, as well as ensuring the potential losses that private lenders might face, because the risk is something that many of these lenders don't want to take, and we've got to make sure that people don't get buried under the debt of their assessments.
Boy, I feel like we're talking about windstorm coverage. There are a lot of similarities there, it sounds like. Let me go back to something you just said, because now it's all falling into place for me, because in researching and reading the bill, I saw these other two bills last year, sponsored by then Congressman Charlie Crist, that went nowhere in Congress. Why didn't they move?
Well, you know, the founding fathers of our country intentionally made the legislative process a challenging one, and so this is the kind of that's the most diplomatic way I can say it. You know, so that legislation was introduced later in the session, and this kind of legislation needs some time to percolate. You have to have it bake in and build consensus around it. I was really thrilled that I was able to get Congressman Bill Posey, who sits on the Financial Services Committee where this bill will be heard, to join me in co-leading it. And, you know, in the legislative process, Glenna, relationships matter. Congressman Posey and I have served together for more than 30 years. We were elected together in 1992. In the class of 1992 in the State House. We served together in the State Senate and now in Congress. And so we have a long-standing relationship, and we spent some time talking about it, and our staffs came together and agreed that this was so important, not only across the state of Florida. He represents, you know, the treasure, the Space Coast, and all up and down the East and West coasts, and even as we saw in Iowa just a few weeks ago. There are buildings that really face structural integrity issues because of neglect and because of a lack of investment to make sure that repairs can be made.
100%. So his constituents are just like your constituents in many ways. And I don't want to get too inside baseball here, but I think that the process, especially for, again, we have an audience that is so engaged and so astute. And I think it's important to realize you reaching out to Bill Posey. I actually met him when he was in the State House. He is a very conservative Republican. And we actually did invite him to be with us today, just so you know, and he declined. But to have the two of you in a bipartisan fashion present this to Congress is really a very big deal.
It is. I mean, we couldn't be more polar opposites, but again, we have forged a bond of trust over many years, and he and I actually, through all three legislative bodies, have always been able to find a way to work together. Congressman Posey and I have supported one another's legislative endeavors, you know, when they really, when you can cast partisanship aside, and around tragedies like this one, especially those that have implications in the future in terms of the safety of our constituents. there really isn't anything partisan about making sure that someone's building doesn't collapse around them when they're sleeping in the middle of the night. And
100%. So nationally, and I know the nation, you mentioned Iowa, but the nation is looking to Florida now to see what happens here, maybe as a model. Nationally, there is about 7.5 million condo residents. And what you're talking about, making federal loans available to people who need, not for damage, but for preventative and for reserve money. That's a chunk of change. Have you figured out the costs of this?
Well, this would allow for the Federal Housing Association to make loans in order that this is not providing funding, direct funding to condo associations or condo owners. What it does is it widens the aperture of the federal housing loan program so that it can include condominium assessments and special assessments for structural repairs by associations.
But that does open up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No,
Zoom makes it very difficult to have a back and forth conversation. It does open up. It exposes the federal loan programs that are involved here to a lot of exposure. But I guess that's what you were talking about before, really limiting. There's a component to the bill that limits that.
Well, we also make sure that we allow private lenders to insure against losses when they'd be loaning to individual condo owners or condo associations for these special assessments. And not to get too in the weeds, but we modify what can be considered collateral, including the future assessments that can be used as collateral. Right now, it's just real property that can be used as collateral. So making sure that we make the kind of adjustments necessary is critical, because as you said, when you were talking to Representative Lopez, I mean, cost does matter here, but safety is the utmost priority. So I'm going to do everything I can to try to get this legislation through. Congressman Posey being on the Financial Services Committee, and by the way, the chairman of the committee, Patrick McHenry, also being a classmate of ours. I'm planning to go and talk with him, with Congressman Posey, so we can really see if we can have a hearing on this. That's what the critical first step is. And then I'm also interested in talking to Senator Rubio about joining us in leading this effort in the Senate.
We have about a minute left, and I really don't want to let a Congresswoman from South Florida go before getting your perspective on the events unfolding in Russia this morning. I know the United States and the administration is watching. That's the official line. Can you give us any sort of insight into the next steps on this side?
Yeah, that's exactly what the administration's posture is right now. What's very clear to me is that Vladimir Putin his effort to invade Ukraine has completely backfired on him. Russia and his rule is clearly weaker than before he invaded, and he's completely undermined the confidence of his own people in him. And we're going to have to see what happens. But when the cracks and the fissures start to show in an administration, I think it makes it much more likely that this is not the last time we'll see an effort to try to undermine, if not remove him from office.
And is there any concern yet, real concern being voiced about the mercenary group, the Wagner group, who I believe it was just a couple of weeks ago, there was a Senate bill filed to designate this particular group as terrorists?
Well, I think what this shows is that not only did the effort to invade Ukraine, killing literally tens of thousands of people, backfire, but it shows even more that we need to make sure that the unified global effort that President Biden has brought to bear against Putin under the Ukrainian President Zelensky needs to continue. We have to make sure that we continue to provide the non-lethal resources that are so essential to ensure that Ukraine can remain a sovereign nation, and to demonstrate to the world that this is not something that democratic nations will tolerate anywhere in the world. And I think Putin is getting a pretty clear lesson about the consequences to his actions.
We are watching in real time. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, always great to have you aboard. Thanks for rocking and rolling with us a little bit.
My pleasure. Thanks.